was fortunate to do degrees where I started learning a lot about this whole concept of the mind and body connection. When we direct our mind, we can actually change the structure of the brain and the body. Thoughts are chaotic and you're going down a rabbit hole and you feel stuck and feel out of control. Those are the key ingredients for mental health challenges. Feeling stuck in your thoughts and out of control. And then you get on top of that the message, I've got a brain disease, so even more control is taken away from you. Essentially what we need to understand is that what the mind and the brain and the body, how the difference is. The first step in understanding how to deal with this is to understand that difference and then to know how to use the mind properly. So the rise in mental health is largely related to how we've mismanaged mental health, and obviously also the changes in the digital age, which are also not being managed properly. So we've taken management of mind and mind out of the equation to a large extent, and if you do that, you will land up with a lot of mental health issues and challenges.
Conditions like anxiety, depression have become sort of buzzwords, and people are kind of self-diagnosing themselves.
The reason that people are misdiagnosing is because people are trying to find answers. And they think, oh, well, there's a name I can attach. We've been sucked into labeling. Labeling can keep you stuck. Labeling is an empty gift. The past can never be erased, but the impact of the past on how I function as a human, that can be reconstructed because of neuroplasticity, because of the mind and body connection, and therefore it can change how I play out into the future. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a hopeful thing.
Hello everyone! I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Celine Chenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. Stressful situations are a part of life, but doing nothing about it or using the wrong coping techniques could diminish our mental health. Without the right mindset and practices, we may find ourselves struggling with anxiety and other mental health challenges. My guest today, Dr. Caroline Leaf, emphasizes that it's not the stressful situations we face that are important, but rather our reactions to them. She'll share insights into the root causes of our responses and techniques to foster healthy and lasting changes in our lives. Dr. Caroline Leaf is a communication pathologist, audiologist, clinical and research neuroscientist with a master's and PhD in communication pathology and a BSc Logopaedics, specializing in psychoneurobiology and metacognitive neuropsychology. Since the early 1980s, she has researched the mind-brain connection, the nature of mental health, and the formation of memory. She was one of the first in her field to study how the brain can change with directed mind input. In our conversation, Dr. Leaf will explain why we have more power over our minds than we realize. She'll present science-backed concepts and strategies to help us handle stressful, toxic, and intrusive thoughts, transforming them into positive thoughts that can lead to personal growth, self-awareness, and enriching experiences. Hello, Dr. Leaf. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well, Celine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am so happy to have you on the show because you have such vast knowledge on how the human mind functions. And I think we really need experts like you in a time like this when mental health challenges are on the rise. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to come on platforms like this one and spread your message with everyone who may really need to listen to your advice.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. I agree that the message is really important now, and I'm always happy to share. So thank you so much.
You're most welcome. So I want to start out with your background, Dr. Leaf. You mentioned that your mission is to empower individuals to take charge of their mental health so that they can learn how to self-regulate. So tell us what the backstory is. What is it that drives your passion for what you do today?
So I've been in the field for nearly 40 years. I'm a communication pathologist and clinical and research neuroscientist, and I'm in the field of psychoneurobiology. So that's a lot of big words for the what I basically research and work in is the mind-brain-body connection. And as we know, that's been the journey of thousands of years of people, spiritual and understand the mind-brain-body connection. What I have noticed, I've practiced for 25 years. I don't practice anymore. I've been researching for nearly 40 years now. So I've always had been doing researching and publishing in the field. We have a full research team and we publish regularly, do different studies all the time. And the reason I do that is to keep up to date in the field and to constantly upgrade the skills that I have learned and the systems that I've developed over time, working with people with all kinds of things like learning disabilities and Alzheimer's and dementias and just trauma from life and just being a human and all the challenges that we face. So whether there's a major thing like a traumatic brain injury or whether you've been through some major trauma or whether you're just trying to cope with being alive, that's really been the goal of to help people along that entire spectrum. And this passion began years ago as a child and was something I pursued through all my degrees. And I was fortunate to do degrees where I started learning a lot about this whole concept of the mind-brain-body connection. Now, back when I started studying, the mind and brain were seen as separate, but the brain was seen as something that couldn't change. And then I did some of the first work in the field of neuroplasticity, showing that when we direct our mind, we can actually change the structure of the brain and the body, not because it's never just the brain, it's always the brain and the body, and the mind changes. And so that has just continued. I've put all my systems into now, I've got 20 books in 24 languages. We sold, I think, 3 million books over the last few years. We have our main platform now is a digital mental health technology platform because of the inequity and the huge equity gap in access to people that are needing help in mental health, and also to address the need of the way that mental health has gone, which I know that's something we're going to discuss over the last 40 years, where it's gone from being from an understanding that life's adverse experiences affect us and affect how we function, to saying, okay, those things happen, but it's all in the brain and it's a brain disease. And those are two very radically different approaches to how we approach human behavior. And what's very interesting, Celine, is that the current model is very unscientific, has been disproved, never really was proven. And if you really dig into the research, it's not confirming a biomedical model, it's actually contradicting a biomedical model. And a biomedical model, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, it's all these big words, a biomedical model is basically looking at how you function as symptoms of a brain disease, and not looking at how you function as basically symptoms of what's happened to you. They take it down to a biological cause. And that has created a massive problem. And in fact, we see in the research that since between 96 and 2014, and then the study continued, there've been massive studies done looking at when we approach humans from that direction, seeing them as mechanical, very materialistic, physical, with parts missing and parts not working, when we do that, we actually create more problems. And so we see now with that approach that people are 95% of lifestyle diseases are from lifestyle, or from experiences, what people have, as opposed to brain diseases. So I know we'll dive into the difference between the mind and the brain and the body, and that will make it clearer. But the point is that we have the evidence showing that this approach that we're using for mental health is not working. So the rise in mental health is largely related to how we've mismanaged mental health, and obviously also the changes in the digital age, which are also not being managed properly. I mean, that's not that the digital age is bad, it's how it's being managed. So we've taken management of mind and mind out of the equation to a large extent. And if you do that, you will land up with a lot of mental health issues and challenges. So our work is to try and help with that. And the app that I've developed, our technology platform, is a really easy way for people to learn how to manage their mind and therefore manage their life, whether it's a massive trauma or whether it is a traumatic brain injury or whether it's just trying to deal with the day-to-day struggles of being alive.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And a lot of people are not getting the information that they need, as you pointed out right now. And that's why conditions like anxiety and depression have become sort of buzzwords, and people are kind of self-diagnosing themselves. If you watch like TikTok videos, if you're on Instagram, people are just saying, oh, I'm anxious, or I think I'm having a bout of depression. So they're just self-diagnosing without really knowing what they're actually saying, and if without having the tools and the know-how to figure out what exactly they're going through. And you suggest that anxiety and depression aren't diseases, and that that it doesn't mean that you're somehow flawed. And I'd love to hear you elaborate on that more.
Absolutely. That's such a great question. And thank you for asking that. I think it's absolutely vital because we are getting the incorrect messaging. And especially, this is where digital technology has been maybe a bit problematic, but it can also be good. And yes, people are self-diagnosing, and it's a massive problem. I mean, I've written papers on this, and there's so many articles. And the reason that people are misdiagnosing is because people are trying to find answers. And they think, oh, well, there's a name I can attach. And as humans, when something feels chaotic, to give it a name and a source makes it comfortable for a while. To say, oh, that's why I do what I do. Let me share that with the world, kind of thing. And we've got people that are, qualified, but also not so qualified, going on and saying, this list of symptoms, you have this list of symptoms, you have this. And then it's become very romanticized almost. And to be, to take on a label and to say I'm autistic, when honestly I worked for years with autism, and it's kind of almost an insult to those people that really do have autism to just say I've got a few social issues, so I've got autism. We've got to be so careful. We've been sucked into labeling, and that as a desire to try to understand. And that's not always the best solution. Labeling can keep you stuck. Labeling is an empty gift. It's a gift initially because you think, oh, wow, relief. This is why I do what I do, or why I show up like I show up. But then you open the gift, and now what? And then you see, well, you're actually more stigmatized. And because if you're a physician, or if whatever work you do, if you go and give a diagnostic label, it impacts your insurance policies, it impacts your job applications, your position at work, how people look at you. So on the one hand, people are saying talk about it. On the other hand, people are scared to talk about it because of the impact. And the research also shows that the more we talk about these things on TikTok, the stigma hasn't lifted, the stigma's got worse because it's actually created a lot of confusion. The good side is that at least people are talking about mental health. Yeah. At least people are talking about the battles of life. But I just would love the languaging to be different, because languages and the words we choose are just so powerful. Words create, thoughts create, and we express our thoughts through words. And so, saying something like I am diagnosed with schizophrenia is a very strong negative type energy. Whereas if you say, I'm really battling from this trauma that I experienced as a child, and I've seen through understanding more of myself and going through various different therapy modes and different types of therapies, that there's stuff that happened to me and that I never really dealt with it. So it built up in my mind and my brain and my body, and it kind of just got triggered at this point in my life where certain stresses exploded and I kind of fell apart. But it's not who I am. It's who I have become because I have I can learn to manage my mind, I can learn to help the parts of my mind reconnect. So I may be going through a bad phase, but it's not a disease that I have. It is a list of behavioral symptoms, and emotional and perspective and bodily symptoms or signals. I prefer to talk about signals rather than symptoms that are showing up because of something else. So if I can understand how I'm showing up through the signals, then I can track back to the experience. I can retrace to the source. I can't eliminate what happened because it's happened. The past can never be erased, but the impact of the past on how I function as a human, that can be reconstructed because of neuroplasticity, because of the mind and body connection, and therefore it can change how I play out into the future. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a hopeful thing. Way more hopeful than telling someone you have a brain disease. Case in point, people that go to rehabs, for example, people that have been labeled with addiction. They are told addiction is a brain disease. They're told things like once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Once an addict, always an addict. Where's the hope in that? If we look at the whole addiction cycle and we look at the whole rehab cycle and we look at the whole people that are battling with mental health challenges, we look at the impact of labeling. We've created a revolving door as opposed to an evolving door. And a revolving door means that people are in and out of rehab facilities, in and out of on and off multiple drugs, getting worse, get back for a while, getting worse. And so it's not solving the problem. It's actually made the problem worse. And that's what that research that I referenced earlier on between 96 and 2014, and that's continued, and plus many other studies, is that when we label something as a disease, then what we're doing is we are actually taking hope away. Now, just to quickly clarify, disease does exist. Heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disorders. There's all these different lifestyle diseases that we have. 95% are lifestyle diseases, 5% are genetic diseases, things like Huntington's and things would fall in that mode. So yes, we have diseases of the brain and the body, and that makes a lot of sense. And we need medical intervention. We need a biomedical model to identify the symptoms of the disease. And when you identify symptoms, you diagnose. And when you diagnose, the implication is, okay, these symptoms mean that there's something symptoms, something wrong with the pancreas related to insulin. Cardiovascular symptoms, something related to the heart. That will make sense. That's the biomedical model. Beautiful for the physical impact of life on the brain and the body. But when it comes to the mind, when it comes to our experiences as humans, our ability to live life, which is mind. Mind is our ability to experience this conversation, the sunset, love, having fun, being scared, being, politics. That's mind. Mind is how we experience life. And it's complicated. It's experiences, negative experiences. And you can't just take a symptom, put it into a checklist. Someone goes into the doctor and says, I've got these, I can't sleep, I'm feeling depressed, blah, blah, blah. And then those check. Oh, you have disease, you have an imbalance of the brain. There's no science to back that up.
That actually happened to me.
Did it?
Yeah, I went to a psychiatrist, and I was going through a rough patch in my life, and she prescribed some anti-anxiety medication to me. And obviously, I mean, I have a lot of knowledge about personal growth, and I have some knowledge about the mind and how it functions, and I didn't feel like it was right for me to take that medication, and I refused to take it. And I felt like there was something I could change it by changing my thought, by changing my behavior and certain lifestyle changes. So I had the awareness to make that choice, but a lot of people don't. What do you think about this tendency for people in the psychiatry community, that community, the medical community, to over medicate their patients?
Yeah, this is really, I'm sorry you had to have that experience, and I'm very blessed and proud that for choosing to draw on your experience of spirituality to help you through that time. It's a problem. It's a huge problem because the training and I've trained many physicians and psychiatrists. I have a lot of psychiatrist friends, and there's so many great psychiatrists and psychologists and medical professionals that are recognizing that the way we are diagnosing and labeling, and just in 15 minutes, I'm depressed, I'm this, a few questions, boom, you've got a prescription. That is just not a solution. And there's so many in the medical profession that are seeing that that is not the answer. It's not working. We need another solution. Very disillusioned with that. Fortunately, we're at that stage. But for many years when I practiced, that was the going thing. And if I dared even speak against it, it was quite something. Now there's a lot of people that will agree with you and I in saying that it's overdiagnosed. People are overmedicated. So a classic thing, like if you are prescribed anti-anxiety medication, just the name is misleading, Celine, because if you think of it, anti-anxiety means I'm anxious. They're going to give me something that will be anti-anxiety, like an antibiotic. I've got this infection, antibiotic fixes it. That's what they're playing on. But it's not actually anti-anxiety or antidepressants or antipsychotics. That's just how it's been described to make it easy for people to understand. But coming with the language of antidepressant, anti-anxiety is the implication that there's an underlying biomedical or biological disease causing. And then the life of the person, what you were going through, is put aside. And it's all focused on you've got this disease, and this disease will always be with you. And that is not the truth. The truth is that you don't have a disease. The truth is that you were going through stuff. And because your mind is how you go through stuff, and your mind basically uses the brain and body as a filter. And as the mind takes these experiences and builds it into the energy fields. And this is all classical physics and quantum physics and microelectronics, nothing weird. This is pure and utter energy principles, gravitational fields. But we build these experiences as little patterns of energy, and those patterns of energy are then put into the brain, filtered into the brain. We need the brain and the body for the mind. The mind energy needs to connect with a physical substance like the brain and the body in order for the thoughts to form into some, and then for it to play out in what you say and what you do. The body and the brain are like a medium through which the mind works to convert or translate what you're experiencing into something physical that you say and do. So if it's a toxic bunch of stress that you're going through in your energy field, maybe we don't use the energy field, but that you're experiencing, it's building these little waves of energy around you, and then that gets put into your brain, and then that change and builds into your brain as neurons with dendrites, and it builds into your body as changes in each cell. So physical structural changes occur, and if those are disruptive, if it's a toxic experience, it becomes wired in incorrectly. So instead of folding in a certain way and instead of being balanced, it's kind of all messed up. And then that translation then comes out as messed up behaviors, messed up emotions, messed up bodily sensations, messed up perspectives on life. And if we don't fix that, if we just keep adding to it, we get stuck in that cycle. So because it's filtering through the brain and the body obviously will get damaged. So yes, you will potentially develop cardiovascular issues or autoimmune or whatever, because if your mind is constantly battering or hammering your brain and body with this toxic stuff that's unmanaged, of course the body and brain will just wear out. They're not doing anything, they're just responding. So that's why as we manage our mind, we can change that. Does that, I can go down this road in many different ways. Does that answer
that definitely makes sense. I mean, I know that, what these medications do is that they essentially numb you, right? Is that what it does?
Yes, sorry. So to come back to that. Okay. So that's the experience. So then now if you're having this experience and you've got all this going on in your mind and you've got this going on in your body, now your doctor tells you, oh, you feel like this because you have a brain disease. You don't have a brain disease. You have potential damage in your brain that can be healed. So then they say, well, give medicine. Now, insulin for diabetics, that's medicine. Medicine means it's targeted to a biological problem. If you have heart disease and you get medication like statins for high cholesterol or something, that's targeted to specific diseases to lower the cholesterol levels to normal levels or whatever. When it comes to anxiety, it's such a broad, massive, it's not as straightforward as diabetes. It's anxiety for you and anxiety for me are two totally different things, right? Because we're having different experiences. Okay, so if I now take a standard, if those anti-anxiety meds and all those things, they are not targeting a disease. All they're doing is they are psychoactive drugs. So they're not even classified as medicine. That's the first thing. Those anti-anxiety, antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-stimulants are all classified as drugs. A drug is psychoactive in that it changes how the brain actually functions. So instead of your brain being able to process stuff properly, it kind of blocks its functioning. And that is why you may feel better, because your brain is kind of getting damaged and numbed. So it's not fixing, it's creating a temporary state of almost pretty much damage, which you can heal. So don't have to panic and fall. People will get panicky. They think it's okay, I'm damaging my brain. You are damaging your brain with that drug, but it can be healed. That's the beauty of it. As we can heal our body with our mind and exercise and spiritual work and all that kind of stuff. But yes, they're not fixing. They are psychoactive drugs that numb, because they creating changes in the brain that aren't good, but they make you feel better because you're not feeling your emotion. But the stuff's not going away. So in the end, it boomerangs and comes back, because when the drug wears off, your pain is still there. The issue's still there. So now you feel worse. You go back to the doctor. They say, okay, we need to up your dose. Then that in itself is changing your brain. Now you get symptoms from the drug. You get iatrogenic symptoms, which means
it's like a vicious cycle.
Yes. Now your brain is getting damaged from the drug. And then they still classify that as, your disease of anxiety is getting worse. Not even this. So then they give you another drug. Now you're on polypharmacy, which creates another problem in the brain. So that's what's happening. And that's why people are getting worse.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. So, Dr. Leaf, what do we do? I mean, if we are feeling out of control and we're just not having that clear thought and we feel like life is all gloom and doom, what do we do in that moment? Because you actually say that we possess more control over our minds than we think we do, but sometimes it really doesn't feel that way. Especially if you're someone who lives in your head a lot and you're going through a stressful time, you are going to overthink. You are going to feel like you're just not in control of your mind. So what do we do if we find ourselves in that place where we're just mired in negative thinking and we just feel like we're going down a rabbit hole?
I love how you put that important key points, and that one is that the thoughts are chaotic and you're going down a rabbit hole and you feel stuck and feel out of control. Those are the key ingredients for mental health challenges: feeling stuck in your thoughts and out of control. So, and then you get on top of that the message, I've got a brain disease, so even more control is taken away from you. So you're thinking, oh my gosh, I feel terrible, life is stressed, and I'm also broken. So it just gets worse and worse and worse. Okay, so essentially what we need to understand is that with the mind and the brain and the body, how the difference is. The first step in understanding how to deal with this is to understand that difference, and then to know how to use the mind properly. So if I may explain that, that'll maybe help understand. So is that okay? I'll explain.
Sure,
okay, so
ahead.
basically, your mind is not your brain, and I've alluded to this already. Your brain is your physical part. It's this physical organ, 3.5 pounds. You've got your body. The brain and body are physical. When you die, those things they just disintegrate. The minute that you die, within 30 seconds, of your heart stopping, your brain is already flatline and everything is now going into reverse drive. Everything's starting to basically shut down and die. You actually weigh about 2.5 pounds in that region less. So the energy of the mind that's been keeping the heart pumping and the brain working and the lungs working and all these things, that energy is now gone. There is no longer that energy force through the body that we pick up on an EKG or an EEG or a sonogram or any kind of medical technology. What we pick up when someone's alive, that is gone when you're dead. So that's just to help you understand that the physical is that substance that we can measure. The mind makes it work. So the mind makes our heartbeat, our brain work, and the mind helps us experience life. So mind is priority. And that's where we should be focusing our energies on and our attention on. And as you said so clearly with your question, we get stuck in our mind. We get stuck in these thoughts. We overthink. We get stuck in our head. We feel chaotic. We lose control. So mind, how does that work then? So there's 3 levels of mind. And the first level is the conscious mind. Everyone talks about the conscious mind. So that's a word that most people are familiar with. And I'm going to explain that very simplistically. The other word that people are familiar with is the subconscious, but don't really understand what it is. Most people, it kind of gets thrown around. It's something that's down there. And then we hear about the unconscious. Well, the unconscious is not a mind state. It's a state of the brain. So it's when you go to sleep. So it's actually either under anesthesia or sleep. So unconscious is a state that you go into when you're asleep from anesthesia or nighttime, that kind of thing. So we've got conscious mind, subconscious, and non-conscious, N-O-N, and unconscious. So it's 4. Conscious, when you're awake. Subconscious is a bridge or a portal or a waiting room, for want of a better explanation, between the conscious and the third level, which is the non-conscious, N-O-N. Unconscious is not in that realm. Unconscious is when you're asleep. Okay, this is really important to understand because it'll help you understand the mind. Now, the non-conscious operates 24/7. It's beyond space and time. It's brilliant. It's where your wisdom resides. It's where every experience you've ever had has become a cluster of memories into thoughts. It is on your side. It never stops. It helps you clean up your mind-brain-body connection. When you sleep, it's very active. When you awake, it's very active. It's the part of you that absorbs your environment. It's the part of you that selects what you've just absorbed and eliminates most of it. It's the part of you that picks up, oh my gosh, you've been focusing too much on that thought and you built this disruptive thought. So it picks up on those things that are disruptive to your functioning and sends that as a message into the subconscious. So the subconscious plays the role of whatever the non-conscious has found that is disruptive to you as a person and your functioning, that is in the now moment, that is what you need to fix now. It will be picked up and put into the subconscious. And then because the non-conscious is too fast for the conscious mind. The conscious mind's slow, so it kind of gets filtered into the subconscious. The subconscious is like a waiting room. So think of an emergency waiting room or something like that, where you've got the order of like the patients that need the most attention quicker, or the ones that are taken rushed through, they get the attention first, the ones that aren't so sick are waiting. So we've got this list of things, these thoughts in our subconscious waiting. Then those are in order of urgency are pushed into the conscious mind. And how do we become aware of those? Through the signals attached to them. And what are signals? Emotions, behaviors, bodily sensations, and perspective. 4 signals, not symptoms, 4 signals. So as the non-conscious mind assisting Celine's life at the moment and going to cause her anxiety, pop it into the waiting room, and subconscious sends it to your conscious mind and it's trying to get your attention. So you feel off. You feel something, your heart's beating. You find your behaviors maybe getting more irritable or something, and your perspective is, it's just a bad day or something like that. Just to give you an example. Now, maybe we just push that aside and we just carry on, but it doesn't go away. It's going to keep coming back. And because we don't pay attention, it actually gets worse. And that the reason it's getting worse is to get your attention. So the sooner we learn to pay attention to our signals and start self-regulating, we then are going to start being able to do something about that and stop feeling so out of control. So think of your conscious mind as having 2 parts. So there's 2 levels. 2 parts. You've got 3 levels: conscious, subconscious is the waiting room, and then that brilliantly wonderful non-conscious. In the conscious mind, we have what I tend to call the parent mind, which is guiding. Think of a parent. What does a parent do? Guides, cares, takes care of. And then you've got a toddler mind. Toddlers experiencing, experimenting. Now, we know a toddler left to their own devices will land up in a lot of trouble. So that's why the parent needs to guide the toddler. So when we get the message coming from the subconscious to the conscious mind, it first hits the toddler level, which is great. It's learning. It's how we as humans grow. We go through experiences, but we need to be guided by the parent mind. So the parent mind is saying, okay, you're feeling this. Why? Why are you feeling this? Where's it coming from? Let's focus in on this. Let's first of all stop for a moment and gather awareness of, what am I feeling? What are these emotions? Where am I feeling this in my body? What is it? What are my behaviors as a result? Let's stick in the now moment, because we're always trying to do too much at once. Stick in the now moment. And how's that affecting my perspective? So maybe it's depression, gut ache, irritability, and life sucks. Then you go 4 sentences. Then you say, okay, why am I feeling like this? Why am I feeling those? And you answer 4 little answers. And then you think, okay, well, what does this mean? What else is linked to this? And you let your mind just go into this flow and bring up whatever. And then you say, okay, here's all this data. I'm feeling these 4 signals. I've got a kind of an idea of why. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that this is triggering. What does this mean? What can I do about this? How can I see this differently? What can I do now? What action can I take? Now, I've just described the 5-step process, which is your next question. And the 5, I think it was that coming up. The 5-step process is what I developed. It's a system of neuroplasticity, a system of directed
neurocycle, right? That's what you call it. Yeah. And this is...
Yes. So it's 5 steps.
Yeah,
it's called
it's
the neurocycle.
Foundational piece of your work.
The foundational piece of my work, what I needed all those years ago when I started, when I was working with people in extreme trauma states or traumatic brain injuries or whatever they were dealing with, I needed a system that helped to see how are we showing up? Where is it coming from? How can we deconstruct and reconstruct? So that's where the Neurocycle developed a theory, did research, developed a system called the Neurocycle. And over the years, as I do research, I refine it all the time. So it's not a technique. It's not a replacing cognitive behavior therapy or dialogue therapy. All of those fit into this. Meditation, all of those are part of this. What I've created is a system of mind management. So you can then learn to step into the parent experience life with the toddler brain. So the experience comes in first to the toddler mind, part of your conscious mind. And then the toddler looks at the parent and says, okay, what should I do? Let's gather awareness. Let's go through these 5 steps. As you do that, you then start listening to the message from what the subconscious is sending up in more detail, which is coming from the non-conscious. So you start creating an open doorway to the non-conscious to find the problem, the source, reconstruct it, and also to find your wisdom. We're filled with wisdom. We all know that from a spiritual level, on whatever level. Scientists have said we're literally wired for love. And so we have wisdom inside of us. Just think of the time that the last time someone came to you and asked you for advice, and you gave them this brilliant advice, and you looked at it and thought, wow, I should take that advice. It's so brilliant. Because we're brilliant. And we need to learn to dive into that. So it opens that. On a neuroscientific level, when you do these 5 steps, you are bringing up the network, because every experience becomes a protein, chemical, in electromagnetic and gravitational network in the mind-brain-body connection. And it's real, it exists, and it's disruptively causing problems, or if it's healthy, it's making you healthier. So you've got to rewire that. And so the Neurocycle is the system you do daily to rewire. And basically, you build breaking down toxic habits, building new habits. And that's why there's a time frame attached to it. So what do? You do the Neurocycle. The Neurocycle helps you get the toddler mind to listen to the parent mind, which then listens to the non-conscious, where the wisdom lies. You do this daily through 5 steps, and you do it for honestly around about 5 to 15 minutes a day, but you do it for 63 days. So if you have a consistent pattern, you do it daily for 63 days, because that's how long it takes to break a habit, not to use these 5 steps in the moment. So what we should do is our day should be one of each. All of us are working on something from the past. None of us have not been not affected by our parents, because our parents, as good as they were or as bad as they were, they had bad parenting, whatever. So it comes through the generation. So
it passes on.
We all dealing. Exactly. We're all dealing with stuff from growing up. We're dealing with stuff at school, bullies, bosses, who knows, unexpected. So we've always got something we need to work on, which has created patterns. So whatever is a pattern, you work on daily for 63 days, one pattern at a time, and you just finish one cycle, then you start another. But you can also use those same 5 steps in the moment. So let's say, Celine, we were doing this interview. Let's say just before this interview, you got an email. I'm just making this up. And this email really threw you off. It was maybe some very nasty email from someone. And you felt so thrown. Your emotions were all over the place, but you had to now be focused for this interview. So you had to be able to not let your head get stuck in that and whatever. So that's when you could do a Neurocycle. Okay, I've got this. I feel that you could run through those 5 steps in a minute, get yourself in a place of mind management, move into the interview, deal with it after. So it's something you can do all day long. So it sounds so simple, and it is, but it's also complex.
But it's a practice.
That's how you practice. And in that, you can build in meditation. So, for example,
and you have an app as well, right? I had a look at your app, and it looks brilliant. And there it is. Yeah. So can you tell us more about that? Because I'm sure people listening are listening to this and they're super intrigued, but it sounds like a pretty elaborate process, and they want to learn how to actually embody it.
Absolutely. So it is an app. That's what it looks like. That big block over there is basically walking you through the 63 days. So I literally give you therapy. I walk you through those 5 steps. I help you find the signals. I guide you through the process. There's also other things on here, like if you're very worked up, there's a decompression guide. There's little mini neurocycles. Let's say that you have someone at work who worries you, or you feel guilty about something. You can click on that and I'll walk you through a neurocycle just to help you in the moment. If you've got children, there's something for parents. I connect you to my podcast, whatever. There's daily inspiration. So it's in the iTunes Store, Google Play, and there's a web version. And it's all evidence-based. Everything I do is evidence-based. These come from my clinical practice and have been simplified and put into the app. The app's been going for a couple of years now, and we're always advancing and developing it. It used to be called Switch years ago. So some people may be familiar with the term Switch, which is the old name for the app. We changed it to Neurocycle about 3 years ago. And so so that takes you through the whole process that I've just described and helps you literally hold your hand moment by moment. I have books and things as well, but the app is where I would go, because I walk you through the process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for describing that. All right, before I let you go, Dr. Leif, I just want to ask you, for those who are listening and who are going through a tough time in their life, what are 3 practices that you recommend for them to really actually feel better in the moment?
Absolutely. I love that question too. So in part of doing the neurocycle, the first thing that you want to do, because the neurocycle is quite a lot of work and it brings up a lot of stuff, and there's a healing journey you go through. And like I've shown that in my research, with your, like for example, day 1 or day 2, you may feel motivated, but day 3 and day 4, emotions change, the chemicals change, so you may feel off, and day 14 you feel different, and day 21. So I've identified that whole process, and if you know what's coming up, if you have a down day, it's part of what you can expect, and then it's easier to carry on. A lot of people give up because they think, oh, I'm working and doing all this work, why am I feeling worse? What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. The healing journey is an up and down journey. So that I walk you through on the app. So that's the first thing, just that if you do decide to help you in the moment, you will go up and down. The healing journey is an up and down process. When you in that, just before you start doing the neurocycle, or if you're in a place where you haven't even got the mental capacity to even think about doing anything, that's where good old-fashioned breathing is so important, because breathing is information. Molecules of oxygen are molecules of information. And if you breathe in, if you breathe out longer than you breathe in, so you take a deep breath in and you breathe out for longer than you breathe in, you activate the vagus nerve, which is, I'm sure you've all heard of the vagus nerve, but it goes from the top of the brain all the way to every organ. And when you breathe in and out for longer, and one of my favorite ones, and that's been pretty well researched, is breathing in for 3 and out for 7. What you do is you basically send information to your brain and your body that it's going to be okay. And the oxygen changes the neurochemistry and neurophysiology and prepares you for, gets you into a place of calmness for the moment. So, breathing is wonderful. Doing maybe some kind of visualization, all those things that we hear so much about, meditation, any of those things are really great. Some people battle when they're really chaotic to close their eyes and meditate. So that's fine. Just breathe and just look at a picture. You don't have to always close your eyes, because if you're very anxious, what we've shown with our research is that if you're very anxious, so that's where, over time, as you do the neurocycle, we've shown that you can actually get to the point where you can close your eyes and you can relax and you can go into that meditative state. So think of a process of mind management a little bit like flying a plane. If you go somewhere, if you go to the airport, you'll see the planes are first prepared. They get gas, they get all the electronics checked and so on. There's a period of preparation that you could see as the equivalent of meditation, breathing, visualization, etc. And I have so many of those exercises in the app. In fact, before you start each day, you do that kind of thing. And honestly, sometimes just a minute of that, the 10-second pause, breathing in for 3 and breathing out for 7.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I've started doing more of that recently, and it's really helped me. Because I'm the kind of person, like, when I get stressed, I tend to hold my breath. And I noticed that wasn't working for me. So I now make a conscious effort to take deep breaths, and,
That's really good. That's really good.
Yeah.
And so what you can based on that, you could breathe in for 3, out for 7. If you can repeat, you can do it with your eyes open, then you or your eyes shut, and then you can, if you do it only once, that's fine. But if you can do it for 60 seconds, that's 6 of those. And if you can do it leaning forward slightly, just lean forward slightly, that actually changes your neurophysiology and it will work more effectively. And you'll feel oxygen going into the front of your brain. You'll feel a little bit high, but it's a good high. Also, what you can do if you get your eyes closed, you can just then, with your eyes closed, roll your eyes up. And as you roll your eyes up, what you do is you activate an energetic wave in the brain called the alpha wave. Now, we have different energy in the brain, and we can frequencies, and they're all operating at different times. But if we feel chaotic and very anxious, we have too much of one and too little of the other, and it's just out of balance. So by this breathing, closing your eyes at some point and just rolling your eyes up for a little bit and then down. I think if you try it now, don't you just sort of roll it up and then down and then open your eyes. That actually helps to open up the alpha, to get more alpha wave. And when the alpha wave opens up and you're breathing with oxygen, that combination helps you to actually start opening the doorway between the toddler mind, the parent mind, and the non-conscious. So you're then much more prepared to take off, which would be gather awareness, step 1. And then the flying part is step 2, 3, and 4, which is reflect and mindstorm and recheck. And then step 5 is to land the plane. Is they'll breathe or they'll meditate, and it works, but then they don't solve the problem. So they still get anxious and the anxiety builds. We can't just be calm down and be aware. We have to also fly the plane. Otherwise, we'll keep crashing. So you have to do the meditation, breathing, whatever the way we've described. Then you have to do the whole cycle of take off, fly, and land, which includes the 5 steps. So you just start with even if you go to my app and you just use the decompression guides, that's a great place to start, just getting yourself under control in the moment.
So that physiological change first.
Yeah, physiological. Always think of preparing a plane. You can't fly a plane without putting gas in or checking all the things. So you've got to do that yourself. You've got to get gas in, get the oxygen in, get the neurophysiology right, get all the engineering of your body right. And that's what meditation, visualization, breathing, and there's a million exercises. I've just given you one that is just works like that. That's in 3, out 7, 5, 6 times, so 60 seconds, leaning forward, close your eyes, roll your eyes up, roll your eyes down. You'll change your neurophysiology. So that's preparation. Then you go beyond that, because that will bring up stuff. And that's why a lot of people will meditate and get worse, because these thoughts come up and they think, oh, I don't know what to do with these thoughts. And then they grab for the medication or the alcohol or something to numb that stuff. What about
physical activity? Sorry to interrupt you, but what if I go for a run or, I do a Zumba class, for instance? Can that also be effective?
Oh, totally. So that would come in at step 5. So if you're trying to just get your mind under control, so let's say you're in this moment, you've got 1 minute and you've got to get yourself under control. You can breathe in and out 1, that's 10 seconds. You can do the 5 steps, each 10 seconds long. So now we're literally at 60 seconds. And including that eye thing that I did. And that your 5th step, which is what action can I do right now? Go to the Zumba class. In other words, action, activity, physical activity, essential for dissipating the energy that's come up. So you do a quick neurocycle to get yourself into the best state, to get the best benefit out of the exercise. So think of Zumba or running or yoga or just propping on your floor and doing some push-ups, any kind of physical thing. Do that at step 5, because it's the action that then ties it all up together. It's the active reach that you do. And then you can always go back in and do the neurocycle and the whole process slower. But you do it really fast, and the action is the last step. So you still prepare, you still do a little bit of that cognitive work, and then you do the action. And if you try that combination, it's phenomenally powerful. And it'll take you, it's a minute of preparation. So what research has shown, by doing that order like that, instead of just, you're going to benefit from the Zumba class, you're going to benefit from the run on the beach, whatever it is you choose to do, but you will benefit so much more. It actually it's a massive percentage more when you actually prepare your mind. So if I'm worked up, I won't just go and work out at the gym. I will first get myself in the right mental state in that minute, maybe 2, depending on what I want to do. And then I'll go and work out, because then I'm going to get more benefit from that workout. Otherwise, I can create a little bit more chaos. It'll dissipate the energy, but you wouldn't have solved the problem. So we want to always be evolving and solving, as opposed to revolving and getting stuck. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to try it out myself. And as you're talking, I was just thinking, I wish they had this kind of knowledge available when we were younger, like they taught this in schools. Is this something that you're doing? Are you trying to somehow get this knowledge to schools and kind of making sure it's part of the curriculum? Because I think that would help our society so much.
We have a big move. We have lots and lots of teachers in this country using it. In South Africa, I was very big. I come from South Africa. I was very big in the education. So this was systems, and it still is systems throughout government and education. We're trying to get that level here. I have written a book for children that's based on all my research.
Yes.
How to help child clean up the mental mess. So this is the adult version. This is book 19 and 20. So this is the adult one, and then this is the one for children. But this is parents to help children.
Okay.
So
how to help your child. Okay, so for all the parents out there, or caretakers or teachers, definitely get a copy of that.
It tells you exactly how to do what we've been discussing with your children. And then there's also lots of tables in here, like how do you speak to a 2-year-old? How do you explain this to a 4-year-old? This is 2 through 12.
Oh, wow.
Anyone from this.
And then your mental mess. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there's in the app, there is the parent section that parallels this. We also have a little character, which is throughout the book, Brainy. We've created this character, Brainy.
Oh, I love that.
Brainy walks the mental health journey with you. So Brainy, this character appears throughout the book. And there's also a coloring book. It was over here a moment ago. I don't know where it is, but we've got a coloring book as well. So all these are available on our website. And the coloring book has got all the emotions and all the different things. So, and it's Brainy in different circumstances. I don't know where my coloring book, I had it out here. Sorry, I've just done so many interviews today. I don't know where I put it down. But essentially, it's like a kit. So for parents, teachers, whatever, you can see it on our website.
Oh, absolutely. Dr. Leaf, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful talking to you. And I believe that the work you're doing is so, so valuable. And it's so crucial for us to learn how to navigate our thoughts and our inner experiences. And the books and the tools that you offer are just, I'm sure it's going to save a lot of lives, really.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for your insightful questions and for that very encouraging statement that you just made. And this is not replacing anything that's out there. It's just making it work. You take whatever you're doing, put it in the system, and then you've actually got your brain and connection working in the right direction. So thank you. We continue to research, and if people want to know more, they can go to our website or our podcast or Dr. Leaf.
Your podcast is drleaf.com.
My website's drleaf.com. The podcast is called Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. We've had actually close to 55 million downloads. Also have my social media, Dr. Caroline
Perfect.
Leaf.
I'll make sure I'll add all the links in the show notes if you didn't get that.